Vader had almost died. Only a few weeks into his tenure as a Sith Lord, he had faced a difficult test. He took on an exiled Jedi who had survived Order 66. Though successful, the damage incurred to both his body and armor was great. It was a miracle that Vader had even survived, considering that the Jedi he faced was known as the greatest raw fighter in the Order. After returning to Coruscant, it was Vader's job to repair his suit, and he did it in a very interesting way. The iconic mask, cape, and machinery that made up the soon-to-be signature image of one of the most powerful Sith Lords to ever live were lying separated on a cold metallic bed. The Emperor stood, looming over it as he assessed the damage. Apart from the helmet and the torso, the suit was almost unrecognizable, with huge tears in the fabric of the cape, exposed cybernetic parts, and even missing limbs. Meanwhile, forced to look upon his failings, Vader himself recuperated in a Bacta tank, encased with an all-glass exterior that meant he couldn't look away as he floated in the healing liquids. The subtle plumes of steam and smoke that curled around his healing tomb did little to obscure his view. His master prowled around it, taunting Vader about his failures, yet ultimately looking forward to furthering his training. However, when reassuring him that the service droids would rebuild his armor, a strong, sudden disturbance in the Force ricocheted across the room. Palpatine's head whipped around to the tank. His gaze was met with the violently red eyes of Vader, piercing through the tank in a blind rage as the liquids and steams engulfed him. As this quickly simmered down, Palpatine withdrew his last comment. In a rare display of sympathy, he granted Vader permission to rework it himself. "This armor is yours. It is only appropriate that you should make it your own, especially with your skill as an engineer," Palpatine said as he left the Sith in solitude. Soon it was just the helmet's dead, absent eyes staring back at Vader. He began to focus on his Force powers, slipping into a concentrated mode within the tank. Though his eyes were closed, he deftly levitated mechanical tools such as spanners and clippers, some attached with wires to an enhanced power source. They began to float around his suit, curiously circling around key areas that were in the greatest disrepair. For Vader, the constant reminder of his failings and lost battles had gone too far. If anything, he wasn't just carrying out a routine repair of his suit. He was making his life bearable again. Like many Sith, especially during training, he was always teetering on the edge of his emotions. But to see his relatively new armor, lying on the bed with fabric torn, cape shred, and robotic arms and legs in varying states of function, would drive him crazy if he didn't have full control over the situation. It was also a constant reminder that he was barely even human anymore. Being covered up with the suit, and with most of the surgery happening while he was unconscious or in blinding agony, he hadn't much noticed just how much the cybernetic elements made up his entire body. Soon, he would become a being totally of Palpatine's creation, further and further away from himself and the past he was being forced to bury. His life as a Jedi Knight, Anakin Skywalker. As the medical and mechanical instruments began their work on reconstructing the soon-to-be image of the Empire's greatest enforcer, Vader watched as the smallest semblance of his life before that moment slipped away. Though he had been allowed to fix the armor himself, there was no way of bringing back who he once was. The piercing, screeching of metal and sparks abrasively attacked Vader's senses as he witnessed explosions of electricity emerge from his suit, soon sending parts flying and violently soldering on new, enhanced ones. As it happened, he was slowly realizing that he would never be able to repair anything with his own two hands again. Like Palpatine stated when he granted Vader permission, Vader was once a revered engineer, and in his time as a Jedi was a great asset to pilots, as well as the Jedi Order in general during the Clone Wars. Now with his arms having been dismembered in his fight with Obi-Wan, and Palpatine quick to replace them with robotic limbs, all he could do was look on as he trusted in his Force power to mend his own new skin from a distance. And this new skin would constantly serve as a reminder of that fight with his former master, and the price he had to pay for indulging in the dark side of the Force, betraying who he really was. There was no way back, no return.